Okay, so we're going to take the fast cast and do a fairly large pour. Now, when you're using a cup like an 8-ounce cup, you could do 4 ounces of part A and 4 ounces of part B, but you get really close to the top when you're trying to fold. Now, if you're trying to keep bubbles out, the key is folding the resin. So it really is easier if you don't go full capacity on the cup. So what I typically do is a little bit under. I'll do 3 ounces of A and 3 ounces of B, keeping my total area up here at the top over 2 ounces of stir room, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and do that. I'll set my silicone mold aside. And it's always a good idea to keep your resin at a level surface. So kind of come out and pour behind the cup so you can kind of see down at eye level. So there's 3 of A. 3 of B. Really should have put the gloves on before I started filming, because you've got kind of a fast turnaround time on the stir on this guy. Nitrile gloves really are the best gloves to use for any kind of resin. You know, it's a fairly easy and safe product to work with as long as you respect what it is that you're working with. And if you're sensitive to smell, you can always do this outside, or you can do it in a well-ventilated area and wear a mask. And N95 is usually pretty good, especially if you have asthma or any sensitivity. I have asthma, but I've actually always been kind of fine with it. Fast cast, easy cast, amazing cast, they're all really great hobby resins. So once these start mixing really well, you can actually feel the cup warm up. It's the chemical reaction taking place when you mix these thoroughly. And like I said, you have a fairly fast pour time on this. This guy cures in 10 minutes. So those are nice and mixed up. I'm gonna bring out my silicone soap mold. I do not need to fill these. I just want an even thin layer to start with. All right, so that 6 ounces gave me a total of 6 ornaments, okay? Not too shabby. So we'll go ahead and let those guys cure, and then I'll come right back to you. All right, so we have fully cured resin. You want that to be good and hard. You don't want it to be flexible. You want it to just be nice and firm coming out of the mold. And so we'll take out a couple of those. We'll set the other ones aside. When you pour the resin, you very often will have a little lip on the edge of this. So if you just flip it, you have a perfectly smooth surface to work on. I like to take my sand block and just gently buff out the sheen on that. I'm not creating a whole bunch of resin powder. I'm just removing the sheen from the surface of the resin. It's essentially the same thing that we do to our stamps when we prime them. Okay, those are good. All right, so now what we're going to do is stamp on deli paper. Deli paper is what you buy for wrapping your sandwiches in, your pickles in, that type of thing. But you can actually buy sheets of it that pull off onto this really nice little small size. So we're going to be using a little bit of deli paper for our next step. You're going to notice that one side has a sheen and one side is matte. you're gonna stamp on the matte side. And the first thing I'm gonna do is use my bird stamp, and that is, ooh, which one is it? I can't remember the name. I'll look it up for you guys so you have that handy, but that's this stamp. And I took the liberty of making a mask for myself already, so that's good to go. I'm gonna stamp with some sort of a saddle brown or sepia brown, any kind of a permanent ink. Now you could totally stamp directly onto the resin blank, but if you mess up, it's kind of a drag. You don't want to waste your resin. So this is kind of a foolproof way of ensuring you get a good inking the first time around. And then we're going to take our heat tool, just a regular little heat tool, and very carefully dry it. Don't get too close, you don't want to burn the paper. Okay, so he's nice and dry. I'll take and lay my mask on top. And then I'm going to go ahead and use this lovely font stamp. Again, this is another older 12 by 12 by IOD. Has all of these really cool like old tickets and sweet little words on it. I really like this one. So I'm using this big chunky piece here. Just going to stamp right over our bird so we have some lovely text all around him. And we'll carefully lift up our mask, and as you can see, we have that lovely bird nicely protected. Okay, so then we can go ahead and pull out our Mod Podge or our matte medium, whatever you happen to have, and we're going to glue it down to our resin blank. Okay. So seriously, any kind of white glue that's a matte, you just don't want gloss. You just want it to be matte. I don't want a big goopy mess. I just want enough to glue down my little piece of paper. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry and set it aside and work on a couple of other fun little designs. Okay, design number 2 is going to be just this pretty font. My goal for this one is just to have that really pretty sepia text in the background, and then later we'll go ahead and put one of the new Woodland Christmas transfers on top of it. Perfect. All right. And we'll do another one here. This one is going to be the snowflakes. Now I want to kind of peekaboo the big one and have the 2 smaller ones, but I have a feeling I'm going to have to stamp those separately. So let's just do the big guy first. So this is the new Christmas stamp set. I'm pretty sure it's called Holly Jolly. Again, I'll confirm and leave all of that information for you in the video later on. Gorgeous. Just gorgeous. Get this guy nice and snug. And then with the itty bitty one. Okay, good stuff. So now I'm going to go ahead and heat set both of those pieces that I just stamped. And we'll go ahead and glue these down. You'll have to excuse the slight sound of snoring in the background. I have a very old dog. He snores really, really loud. I'm pretty sure you guys can probably hear that in the video. You really want to try to get all of the little wrinkles out. This is super, super fine paper. So the other thing I do is I kind of take my finger and sort of run it over the surface just to kind of work out any little air bubbles or any little creases you might have in the paper. It's another reason we heat set our ink so that we don't smudge all of that around while we're pressing it down. I want this one to have all 3 sizes of snowflakes on it. Okay, good. We'll let that one dry as well. Now, if I come back to the original one that I created, that's my little bird guy. Make sure to throw your brushes into some water. You don't want the glue to dry on those. Cap off your glue. You can grab your sanding block and off the edge of your ornament, sand the edge of it, and it tears away a perfect edge on your piece. Beautiful. So I'm not going to add any color to this like gelatos or watercolor or acrylic or anything. I am a very neutral vintage Christmas kind of girl, but I think I would like to add maybe a little transfer in there. I don't know. We'll see. I might change my mind. You could even have... No, I don't like it. sometimes you just have to step away from the transfer and not over embellish. So I'm going to leave that guy be, and then I'm going to go ahead and sand. Actually, this guy's still a little wet, so let me pause this and we'll come back and do this as soon as it's dry. All right, so we've got dry resin and tissues now. Again, just kind of coming off the edge. And I'm sanding away from the ornament, not towards the center of the ornament. So away towards the outer edge. Awesome. All right, so for this guy, I cut out some of the Woodland Christmas Transfer, and I'm just gonna cut this guy in half because I think we'll layer it, and you don't need the full thing to layer. So we'll treat this almost like it was another piece of holly. Again, I just kind of sanded off the excess of that transfer. And this piece will bring over, kind of cover up that little edge there. Golly, I might even be able to get 3 spots out of this. I go off the edge. And then I can kind of bring a little of this guy peekabooing off the edge over there. And before you know it, that one piece of holly went really far. Seriously sticky. Love that. All right, so that one's good. You can set that one aside. And then we also have our snowflakes again. I think those need some sparkle. So I'm going to put you on pause and come back with a little glitter. Okay, so I'm back and I've got some glass glitter here. There's just nothing like the sparkle of glass glitter. And I'm just going to grab some of my white glue with a very, very small brush and just start kind of brushing on a light touch of adhesive. Keep in mind, you might need to work in stages depending on how fast your glue dries. You don't want this to be super, super thick. So I have that one little spot done. I'll just sprinkle on some glitter onto that area. And for those of you guys that are new to the resin world, glitter really pops underneath resin. Now I'm not going to coat the entire thing. I like the light dusting of it. I still want to see the stamp design underneath it. But I will come in to a few areas in the center and kind of bring a little of that sparkle into the center of the snowflake. Nice. Just a really, really subtle pop. And then for the other snowflakes, I'm not necessarily going to do like full adhesive on those ones, like this little tiny guy. I'll just do a little bit of sparkle in the center of that snowflake. And maybe do just down the stem. Of the flake on those. Just keep it a little different. Perfect. And then for my holly and berry, I think it would be really fun just to add a little bit of sparkle to kind of suggest the reflection on those berries a bit. Just a little bit of zhuzh. Okay. So I'm going to clean up my glittery mess and then we'll come back with the resin. Okay, so I'm back with my clear resin. This is not the fast curing resin. This is not white resin. This is clear resin, which means that it typically takes anywhere from 6 to 10 hours to cure. So my suggestion to you, work at night. Always do your resin pours at night, because then you're not tempted to get your fingers in them. And when you wake up in the morning, it's kind of like Christmas. There's all kinds of fun stuff to look forward to. Always start with the thicker of the two, which is with the clear resin, it's always A, okay? And I'm gonna go with 1 ounce of this thicker one. And you start off just by pouring a little bit and then sort of letting it level out, because it kind of takes a while to come up to the line. And again, kind of coming at it at eye level ensures that you have equal proportions. Now with the white resin, it's not as important that like your proportions are spot on. It can be off just a smidge, but with clear resin, it can get kind of sticky, and the resin actually cures tacky. And it doesn't mean your pieces are lost. It just means that you have to wait for it to cure fully, and then you pour a second coat of resin on top. All right, so I'm at 1 ounce. Just gonna go ahead and cap that off. And this one is a lot thinner, so it pours faster and easier. And we're bringing this guy up to the 2 ounce line. There we go. Cap that one off. And now we fold, okay? folding is the key to having less bubbles. So basically what I do is I kind of just take and do large folding movements with the stir stick. You don't have to stir it crazy. You really just want to be kind of slow and methodical about it. And then I kind of take it and I scrape the edges, make sure everything is getting really, really nicely mixed. Kind of go to the bottom of the cup, scrape it, continue folding. You can see all of this extra room I have in my cup. So going with larger resin cups is really, really nice, because this way you're not spilling and you have plenty of room. As of right now, I have very few air bubbles. The ones that are in there are quite large. Those are the easiest to pop. Every resin has their instructions on how long you stir. I've been using resin for over 15 years now, so I just kind of, I have a feel for it, but mix ratio 1:1, volume, work time 30 to 40 minutes. Yeah, I think the instructions for like how long to stir, it's usually about 5 minutes on most of these. And again, all of you guys will probably be using different resin. There's ice resin, Nun Design resin, Amazing Clear Cast, Easy Cast. There are so many types of clear resins on the market. And not all resins are equal. You know, there are some that they seem to perform a little bit better. And again, kind of periodically scraping the sides, scraping the bottom. Now once you're done doing your fold/stir, you want to leave your resin for 5 minutes to kind of degas on its own. And when I say degas, that's just basically allowing all of those air bubbles to float to the surface. Which makes them easier to pop. So I can already tell the consistency of the resin is becoming much easier to stir. It's less thick. If I have any extra resin, we'll go ahead and pour it into our pendant mold. Always have an extra mold ready to go, even if that's one of your IOD molds. They look really, really cool with clear resin. When I say the pendant molds, that's this guy, and they already have the little pegs in them, which is kind of cool, you know? So I cast resin in these guys already. It's a really thin layer, so it's still kind of flexible. I cast these 2 days ago. But I didn't want to waste a bunch of resin, and I certainly didn't want these to be too heavy, so I tend to use a little less in the first pour. It's just enough to kind of make it rigid. That way I can put my transfers on it later. So I'm just going to set those aside and have 3 of these little areas ready to go, just in case I have extra resin. All right, so do not pour your resin onto your ornaments. The key is to literally just take your stir stick and use it as a tool. Now, like I said, you can technically let this degas for 5 minutes, but I'm going to move pretty quickly, so we're not going to degas. And I'm going to kind of take my little stir stick and bring it out to my ornament. You can go right smack up against the edge of the ornament. Resin has a bit of surface tension, so it'll typically, assuming you don't have too much flooding over the edge, it'll typically hold onto this circular shape. I'm just going to kind of take and turn this a little. kind of treating your stir stick like a brush, essentially. We don't really need super thick ornaments, so it's okay if this is just a really thin coat of clear resin on top. And the other really cool thing too about resin is everything is magnified. Color, sparkle, everything becomes really crisp. That bird stamp just became even more crisp. Now, we really didn't talk about work surfaces, but when you're doing resin, it's not a bad idea to do a resin pour over, like, say, a trash bag that you taped down to your work surface, or one of the heat-resistant craft mats that we use a lot in the craft industry. A Silpat sheet that you've designated for crafts is kind of nice. I'm being careful just to kind of glide my resin over the glitter. I don't really want to be scraping at the glitter accidentally. And again, I'm pushing the resin out to the edge of these ornaments. This is such a thin coat of resin that those bubbles are going to come to the surface really quickly. Okay, good stuff. All of our pieces are covered. I'm going to go ahead and scooch over just a bit here and lay out that pendant mold. And like I said, you don't need a lot. Just take your stick and push the resin around, and so it goes up to each edge and around that little nub. Never waste your resin. Always have a mold or something ready to go, just in case. In fact, I have a gigantic jar of resin castings that I save. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and let those ornaments cure, and we'll let the resin in our pendants cure, and we'll go ahead and come back and show you the rest of them in the next session. One of the things I forgot to mention really quickly, if you use your heat tool, and again, it depends on the heat tool you have. If you have the White Ranger heat tool, it doesn't blast out a lot of air, but it gives you lots of heat. And what happens is the bubbles rise to the surface and pop for you. So if you have an embossing gun, like this guy here, You want to make sure that you hover the heat, but don't blast the resin, because you can blast the resin over the edge of the ornaments and you can blast them out of the actual mold. So just hover very carefully, just to kind of get those bubbles to start popping. If you see your resin moving, you obviously have your heat tool way too close. Alright, so that is how I pop my itty bitty micro bubbles. And I'll come back like about 30 minutes out and pop a few more that have come to the surface. You just sort of babysit them a little bit. Otherwise, if you really don't care, it's no big deal, okay? Okay, so we're back this morning. The resin has officially cast and cured. We have that really beautiful glassy sheen on top, and as you can see, all of the detail is just beautifully magnified. And then, like I mentioned, all of the red and the greens, all of the colors really pop under that resin. So I drilled a 3/16 hole in this one, just so that I have a large enough hole to like really feed ribbon through and that sort of thing. But you can always use a hand drill too, and they come in a variety of different sizes. And basically, you don't have to have the big scary drill if you're not accustomed to that sort of thing. And you just sort of take and push, kind of create a little groove for yourself in the piece, and then just start twisting. And it'll take you a little bit of time. You can put a piece of wood or something protective underneath, but basically you start this little hole and you just kind of keep wheedling away at the little hole. And you'll see the little resin fuzz kind of coming off of it as well. Oops, it's not quite. There we go. So yeah, easy peasy to just pop those little holes in. Now, I'm kind of thinking, excuse me, I'm kind of thinking that like these would be really lovely personalized ornament gifts or something to that effect. So even if you did like a gold paint marker, something in the line of like gilded, like gold leafing in pen. I know they have them in pen form. I just don't have one, unfortunately. But you could say something like, Happy Holidays from, and we're the Grenzers, so I'll just say the Grenzers. So you can go ahead and personalize all of the ornaments on the back, and how lovely would it be to have the gold leafing pen as well on the back of those, and then you can sort of hang them. Now I did these fun little coffee dyed tags earlier on, and I was thinking it would be lovely to sort of have one hanging from one that hadn't had any design on it yesterday, so so that the ornament itself could actually speak for itself. And I'm thinking probably, I did a little tea-dyed ribbon here. You just basically kind of put it in a junky spritzer, like a mini mister, or if you have one of those tiny little travel size spray bottles, those are perfect. And then you just put the coffee inside of the spray bottle, and you spritz and crinkle and spritz and crinkle, and you take your heat tool and you dry it, and then you spritz and crinkle some more. Just kind of a simple little project to create this really beautiful antique-y looking silk ribbon. So what I like to do is double up. I'm gonna go with, oops, got myself a knot here. I think, yeah, that should be good. I like to find my halfway point, and then I will take and feed this through. Easier said than done, I say. Honestly, a jump ring would be a lot easier. But this is doable. If you have a needle threader, that's also another option. Or The other option, I learned this a long time ago, when you can't quite get something through. This might even be too thick. And then just do your sweet little loop. And of course, it has to have a bow. And there are those really beautiful decorative Christmas hangers that have nice wire decorations on them, not just the plain green ones. The plain green ones are just fine too. There's nothing wrong with them. But if you wanted to go a little bit more fancy, you could do that. So you've got some fun little ornaments, and again, if you hung them onto a tag, it makes a really nice gift to give somebody during the holidays that's sort of personalized. And you could probably do some sort of a hanger on the tag itself and attach this to the hanger or the twine or whatever it is that you wanted to do. Everything is so fiddly today. It's so funny. Just so you know, it happens to all of us. I'm just going to undo this a smidge. There we go. And if you don't want quite as much frill as all this extra silk ribbon hanging down, you can trim it and keep it nice and tidy. It doesn't have to be quite so over the top. But I have to admit, I do really like it. And then, like I said, you just kind of feed the sucker through. Hang it onto your little tag, and you just have a stash of these ready to go. Or you can personalize them. And voila, that simple. And just another fun way to use your extra transfers and your stamps and stamping on a concave surface and then actually decoupaging your tissue too. There are so many options with the techniques that we've kind of gone over. So I will leave you guys with that little ornament, and I will finish up a couple of more and take a picture of those and put them in the video for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I love sharing crazy random mixed media techniques, and of course I love my IOD, so you can never go wrong with that. All right guys, thanks. Have a good one.